There is a kind of fear that has nothing to do with darkness or violence. It is the fear of being entered, of something crossing a threshold you believed was secure and settling inside you before you understood it had arrived. There is a kind of fear that has nothing to do with darkness or violence. It is the fear of being entered, of something crossing a threshold you believed was secure, a border, a doorway, a boundary of the self, and settling inside you before you understood it had arrived. We build walls. We always have. Between nations, between bodies, between the known and the unknown. And the question that keeps us awake is never whether the wall will hold. It is whether the thing on the other side has already found the gap we did not know was there. Bram Stoker published Dracula in 1897. It became the most famous horror novel in the English language and one of the most misunderstood. It is shelved as Gothic. It is read as monster fiction. But the fear at the centre of this novel is not about teeth or blood or the undead. It is about control, about the terror of discovering that the walls you built around your life, your reason, your faith, your certainty about who you are, were never as solid as you believed. Jonathan Harker is a young English solicitor, careful, professional, certain of the world and his place in it. He travels to Transylvania to complete a property transaction with a foreign nobleman. The journey itself is a study in the gradual loss of certainty. The further east he goes, the less the world resembles the one he knows. The roads narrow, the language changes, the people cross themselves when he mentions his destination. By the time he reaches Castle Dracula, he has already left behind every system that made him feel competent. English law, English manners, the quiet confidence of a man who believes the world operates according to rules he understands. The castle is not a ruin. It is immaculate, vast, and ancient. The Count himself is courteous, learned, and precise. He speaks multiple languages. He knows English law better than Harker does. He has studied London, its streets, its customs, its property market, with the patience of a man who has nothing but time. And yet, something is wrong. The Count casts no reflection. He climbs walls like an insect. There are no servants. There are no mirrors. And the doors, Harker gradually discovers, are locked. He is not a guest. He is a prisoner. But the realization comes slowly, because the hospitality is so perfect, so practiced, that it takes days to understand that courtesy and captivity can wear the same face. What Stoker understood, and what most adaptations miss entirely, is that Dracula is not a creature of chaos. He is a creature of absolute order. He plans. He studies. He acquires property in London months before he arrives. He learns the language, the customs, the legal systems of the country he intends to enter. His invasion of England is not a siege. It is a transaction, slow, methodical, invisible to those who are not paying attention. The Count does not break down doors. He waits to be invited. And this is the detail that makes the novel quietly terrifying. Because the threat Dracula represents is not the monster at the gate. It is the stranger who enters through the front door, who speaks your language, who understands your systems, and who uses that understanding to take what he wants from you, while you remain unaware that anything has been taken at all. Stoker was writing at the height of the British Empire. His readers lived in a society that defined itself by control. Control of borders, of territories, of the bodies and behaviours of its citizens. Dracula inverts all of it. He crosses borders without permission. He enters bodies without consent. He turns the empire's own tools, property law, shipping routes, international commerce, into instruments of infiltration. The novel is, in this sense, a story about the anxiety of the colonizer encountering something that colonizes back, something older, more patient, and entirely unimpressed by the systems that were supposed to keep it out. Lucy Westenra is the first to fall. She is young, beautiful, admired, courted by 3 men in a single day. Stoker presents her as someone who moves through the world with a lightness that is also a kind of exposure. She is warm, generous, and entirely unprepared for what comes. Dracula does not attack Lucy. He visits her. Night after night, while she sleeps, he draws something from her, vitality, will, autonomy, and replaces it with something she cannot name, something that moves like her and speaks like her but is no longer entirely her. Her friends notice the change. She grows pale, her moods shift, She sleeps restlessly and wakes without rest. The doctors come. They transfuse blood once, twice, again, pouring life into her from the veins of the men who love her. They hang garlic at the windows. They consult books. They do everything that science and folklore can suggest. And it is not enough, because what is happening to Lucy is not a disease that can be treated. It is a transformation that is already underway. And what Stoker describes, stripped of its gothic dressing, is something his readers would have recognized without needing a vampire to explain it. The slow, visible decline of someone you love into someone you no longer fully recognize, the helplessness of standing beside it, the unbearable patience it demands. Lucy dies, and she returns. What comes back is not her, though it wears her face. It moves through the churchyard at night, beautiful, luminous, predatory. The men who loved her are forced to see her as she has become, a figure that retains every feature of the woman they knew, but has been emptied of everything that made her who she was. What remains is appetite without restraint, desire without conscience, grace without warmth, and this is where Stoker reveals what the novel is truly about. Not fangs, not coffins, not crucifixes held aloft in moonlit crypts. It is about the fear that desire, unchecked by will, becomes monstrous, that the boundary between love and consumption is thinner than we care to admit. The men who destroy what Lucy has become do so with grief, not triumph. They are not slaying a monster, they are releasing someone. And the violence of that release, Stoker does not spare it, is the cost of having failed to protect the boundary while it's still held. Mina Harker is the true centre of the novel, though she is rarely treated as such. She is intelligent, disciplined and modern. She types, she organises, she cross-references the journals, letters and medical records that the men around her produce in overwhelming volume. Without Mina, the group hunting Dracula would have no coherent picture of what they face. She is the one who sees the pattern. She is the one who connects the shipping logs to the property deeds to the bite marks on Lucy's throat. She is in every way that matters the mind of the operation, and it is Mina whom Dracula ultimately chooses, not because she is weak, because she is strong. The violation Stoker describes is deliberate and intimate. Dracula forces Mina to drink from him, creating a bond, a connection that allows him to move through her, to see what she sees, to know what she knows. It is control disguised as closeness, possession dressed in the language of union. And Mina's horror is not simply that she's been touched by something inhuman. It is that she can feel it changing her. That part of her does not resist, that somewhere beneath the revulsion there is a pull she cannot fully explain and does not want to name. Stoker understood that the most frightening violation is not the one that overpowers you. It is the one that finds something inside you that answers. The hunt for Dracula that occupies the final act of the novel is, in many ways, a journey backward. The men travel east, retracing Harker's original route, moving from the modern world into the ancient one. They carry revolvers and crucifixes. They use telegrams and train timetables. They are men of the late 19th century, armed with every tool their era can provide, pursuing something that predates all of it. And the further they go, the less certain their advantage becomes, because what they are chasing is not simply a man or a monster. It is something older than their science, and more patient than their courage. Stoker understood that the Enlightenment's deepest anxiety was not the existence of the irrational. It was the possibility that the rational was insufficient, that all the technology and method and careful documentation in the world might not be enough to keep the darkness on the other side of the border. The group that pursues Dracula is armed with knowledge. They have the journals, they have the evidence, they have the pattern. But knowledge, Stoker suggests, is not the same as power. Understanding the threat does not guarantee you can stop it. And the further east they ride, the more visible this truth becomes. The novel ends with Dracula destroyed. The ancient threat is defeated by modern men with modern tools. But Stoker does not write the ending as a triumph. He writes it as a quiet, uncertain relief. The scar on Mina's forehead fades. The journals are gathered. Years pass. And in the final paragraph, Stoker strikes a note that is easily missed. Jonathan Harker reflects on the documents, the evidence, the whole careful record of everything that happened, and admits that there is hardly a single piece of authentic material among them. No one would believe it. The proof does not prove. The rational account of an irrational experience is, in the end, just paper. This is Stoker's final, devastating move. After 900 pages of meticulous documentation, diaries, letters, telegrams, shipping manifests, medical records, phonograph transcripts, the author tells you that none of it holds up. The systems the characters use to understand and defeat the monster cannot, in the end, verify that the monster existed at all. The tools worked, the knowledge was real, the victory was genuine, but the record that preserves it is, by its own admission, insufficient. The rational edifice, having done its job, quietly collapses under its own weight. What endures in Dracula, more than a century after it was written, is not the monster. It is the anxiety, the sense that control is borrowed, not owned, that the boundaries we draw between self and other, between desire and action, between the known world and whatever lies beyond it, are thinner than we allow ourselves to believe. Every generation finds its own Dracula in this novel. The Victorian reader saw the foreigner at the gate. The 20th century saw repressed sexuality. The modern reader sees surveillance, consent, the violation of data, and selfhood. And each of these readings is correct, because Stoker built something more durable than a single metaphor. He built a structure of anxiety that reshapes itself to fit whatever the reader fears most about being entered, inhabited, and changed without permission. Stoker did not write a horror novel. Not really. He wrote a novel about the horror of discovering that the thing you feared was never outside the walls. It was already inside, in the desire you would not examine, in the invitation you did not know you had extended, in the gap between what you believed about yourself and what, under pressure, you turned out to be. The door was never locked. That is what Dracula knows. That is what he has always known. And that patient, ancient certainty, the knowledge that every threshold, given enough time, will open from the inside, is the thing that has kept this novel alive for more than 100 years. Not the blood, not the fangs. The invitation.